Good afternoon, and welcome to the special public meeting of July 30th, 2024 of the Township of Washington Township Council. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Publics Meeting Act by the Township Clerk to at least 2 newspapers on July 22nd, 2024, and this notice has been posted on the Township Bulletin Board, Electronic Message Board, WCTV, and the Township website. Please notify the municipal clerk of any disability requirements necessary to attend at the Township Council meetings. The fire exits are located through the double doors on your right and through the door on your left. Please silence all cell phones. If you are unable to attend the council meeting in person and would like a topic to be addressed at a council meeting, please send emails to the Township of Washington. Contact all council members at once at twipofwashington.us. I'd ask you please rise for the salute to the flag, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, sir.
Councilman Sears?
Here.
Councilwoman Velez?
Here.
Council Vice President Casio?
Here.
Councilman Ullman? And Council President DeSena.
Let the record reflect, also in attendance, who is not in attendance, that's what we have. No one's here. Just Clerk Wachowski, she's here. Approval of minutes, there doesn't seem to be any. No resolutions today, no ordinances. Now we'd like to open up the general public comment. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Anyone from the audience?
Motion.
Oh, motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, second by?
Velez.
I'm hearing voices here. You're all in favor.
All in favor. Do we have anyone on the web?
We have Attorney Bailey. Hello, ma'am, how are you?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Other than that, do you have any questions, Siobhan?
I do not, but thank you.
Okay, seeing no hands and no one on electrical media, I'd ask for a motion to close the public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So today we have a presentation by Montclair State University and the PSE&G Institute for Sustainable Studies. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah. If you'd like to start off a presentation, we'd appreciate it.
Just make sure you are with a microphone at some point. There is the handheld, but these 2 microphones in front of you do work. And they will move to an extent, so you can, whatever you need to do, just make sure you're close enough. That would pick you up,
And
okay?
please introduce yourself.
Yes.
And is that turned on?
There should be a switch.
You have to push it in with a pen. If you have a pen, push it in with a pen. That sounds good. Thank you. And just state your name as you speak.
Hello, we are interns from PSEG Institute for Sustainability Studies Green Teams program that is in partnership with Montclair State University. We are the Green Teams serving the Township of Washington. Next slide.
And state your name.
My name is Kayla Capistrano. I am a rising junior at Rutgers University majoring in environmental engineering.
Hi, my name is Maylee Hahn. I'm a rising junior at Hofstra University. I'm double majoring in sustainability studies and music business with a double minor in geology and GIS.
My name is Vinlom Dewe. I'm a rising junior, double majoring in computer science and math at Case Western Reserve University.
My name is Joel Seiche. I'm a rising junior at the College of New Jersey studying civil engineering with a minor in environmental science.
And my name is Emily Pasuelo. I am a senior at Montclair State University, and my major is geographic, environmental, and urban studies.
Thank you.
Next slide.
And as you speak, if you could just state your name.
My name is Kayla Capistrano. So our goals for this summer were to help you guys with improving the stormwater management, creating a flood mitigation plan, as well as increasing community outreach through educational materials. Next slide. These are our 4 main deliverables, or 4 main goals that we wanted to reach by the end of the summer. So the first one is a hydrology assessment. That's basically just how the water is moving throughout the town. The second one is data collection and mapping, so a visualization of how the water is moving in the town. The third one is creating a flood mitigation plan that is specific to the Township of Washington for you guys. And the fourth one being community outreach. Next slide.
So we started with our hydrology assessment. Next slide, please. So in our preliminary site visit, Councilman Tom Sears had brought us around throughout your township and pointed out to us various areas that had been targeted as frequently flooding zones. So actually in this slide up on the screen, our first photo, which would be on the right-hand side, is actually a photo of Musquapsink Brook. He pointed out to us this area in particular because it had been experiencing such severe erosion. And actually that fence along the brook bank, because the erosion has been so severe, these people's property lines have been pushed back, and again, because of such severe flooding and erosion. Next slide, please. So from this preliminary site visit, we were able to collect those coordinate points and be able to later map these out in our maps for visualization for you guys. Next slide, please.
So as a part of our preliminary hydrology assessment, we conducted a survey. And we did that through Qualtrics, and we tabled here at the Fresh Grocer in the plaza. And we also asked our organization rep to post it online on Facebook so that we could distribute it to more people. And our main goals with this were to gain insight from you guys on your personal experiences with flooding. And we also wanted to quantify the flooding damages so we could see how severe flooding is in this town. We also wanted to hear any input that you guys had in terms of a flood mitigation plan. So if you had any ideas in terms of strategies, we wanted to hear that as we developed our mitigation plan. And as a result, we received 187 total responses. 156 of them were from tabling and distributing on Facebook, and 31 of them were from the members who responded in the Washington Lake Association Facebook page. Next slide. So as a result, one of the questions we asked was, what is an estimate of the damage that were caused due to flooding? So our range that we received from the community was approximately $936,000 to $1.7 million. And it might seem like a small number for a town, but this is 1/50th of the population, as this is coming from 187 survey respondents. So it was clear to us that flooding is severe in terms of flooding damages. Next slide. We also wanted to gain insight on where flooding was occurring within people's houses so that we could directly address those as we create our flood mitigation plan. Next slide. Additionally, we also wanted to take a look at where the sources of flooding were. So we gained insight. We saw that most people believe that sources are from the roads, the lake, and the brook. And this is something we wanted to know as we developed our flood mitigation plan so that we could also tackle the problem at its root. Next slide.
So the next step in our project was to do some data collection and mapping. Next slide, please. So we collected data from four main resources. Those were the United States Geological Survey, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, the United States Department of Agriculture, and we also were able to utilize some data from Boswell Engineering. Next slide, please. So I know some of you may be wondering what exactly is a watershed. Some people may not know. So as you may be able to tell from the diagram, a watershed is essentially a depression on the Earth's surface which runoff from precipitation or melting snow. It's essentially the route that the water is going to take as it travels down towards its main body of water. Next slide, please. So as we were creating our maps, we were able to create a map actually of the watershed for the Township of Washington. I know it's a little bit small on the screen for our people in person here, but the bolded line is actually the boundaries of your township, so that's the Township of Washington. And then the majority green shape is the shape of your watershed. So surprisingly, your watershed does actually extend a few townships above and maybe a township or so below your actual boundaries for the township. And we also were able to plot the flood points, which are the pale yellow stars. And most of all of these flood sites, which we collected during our preliminary site visit, do fall along the Musquoxing Brook. We thought that was interesting as well. And from this map, we were able to learn that about 16% of the total area of the watershed was actually forest, wetland, agriculture, and water coverage, but about 84% of the total area of the watershed is urban and barren land. Next slide, please. So I believe a distinction between urban and barren land should be made. Essentially, urban land is like land that has been developed, so you have features like parking lots, developed areas for shopping centers, shopping malls. It has features such as asphalt, concrete, and it can also include artificial recreational areas like turf, like turf fields. And barren lands are areas where plant life is sparse or very, very minimal. It can have like dry dirt, or it maybe was previously developed, but now it just lies bare with some concrete left over. Next slide, please. So this map represents actually the zoomed-in version of the map that we saw previously. We're focusing now just within your township. And what we have here is the stormwater drainage system overlaid on top of your watershed within the township boundaries. What I would like to point out is that we have 4 main potential areas where runoff could be compounded. What we found was these 4 areas highlighted in green on the map, where essentially your drainage systems are actually originating outside of your watershed. So when there's already a flooding occurring within your township, these drainage systems could potentially be bringing in excess water from outside of your watershed and compounding the effect of flooding within the town. We were able to identify these areas as Jacob Road, sort of near Horizon Court for the second point, Katarina Place, and Lafayette Avenue. And what I also thought was interesting was that that 4th point on the screen, the 4th green point, is also near a good amount of flood zones that were pointed out to us previously. And it's also near some designated wetlands as well. Next slide, please. So our last map was, again, a map of our watershed, but instead we're looking at your impervious surfaces. So I know some of you may be wondering, what is an impervious surface? Essentially, it's an area where water is not able to infiltrate very well. So from this map, we were able to tell that about 25 or a quarter of the total area of your watershed is actually impervious surfaces. So that means that about a quarter of your watershed, the water is not able to infiltrate and it just runs off. Next slide, please.
One of the things that we managed to successfully do was to calculate the runoff that's from the surrounding watershed and contributes the most to flooding inside the Township of Washington. The goal of this is for us to be able to propose solutions that actually solve the problem in hand and have some sort of mathematical way of seeing whether the proposed strategies actually solve the problem in the Township of Washington. This graph over here shows precipitation data from January 1st, 2022 up until the 2nd of July, 2024. And what it basically shows is the precipitation over time shown in blue, as well as the flow depth or the discharge, the amount of discharge that you need to discharge the lake in order for it to accommodate the water. The reason why this was done is to come up with a preliminary way to determine if the lake itself can be used as a potential flood mitigation strategy and help contain the water that's being contributed by the watershed. As you can see from the relative sizes of the graphs themselves, the blue graph is significantly lower than the red graph, and this just shows you that there's a disproportionate amount of compensation that you need in order to contain that water. So for an insignificant amount of rainfall, you need to discharge the lake to a really huge depth in order to accommodate that water that's contributing to the flooding. And the hallmark of this graph is just to show you that for every single inch of rainfall, you need to discharge the lake to a depth of 11.51 feet. And just to give you another perspective, in a typical storm, you'd have precipitation at 4 inches, which means that you need to discharge the lake to a depth of 46 meters and feet. And this just showed us that for obvious reasons, health reasons also considered, it's not really something that can be used to take care of the flooding that's occurring in the Township of Washington. And just for another perspective, 4 inches of rainfall would equate to a cup of coffee, and that 46 feet that you need to drain the lake would be approximately 3 giraffes stacked together vertically upwards. Next slide, please. Using the survey data that we collected, we also managed to do a risk analysis, and this would help us find the most at-risk areas in the Township of Washington, particularly looking at the streets where most of our respondents responded from and identified that they experienced flooding inside the Township of Washington. And what this graph shows, every single bubble that's on the graph shows a street in the Township of Washington. And the higher the bubble is on the chart, the more at risk that particular street is. And the larger the bubble is, the more people who are affected with flooding. And to summarize this graph, the high-risk areas were identified to be Berry House, Berry Drive, Amherst Drive, Adams Place, B Street, and Cosmo Street. And the really interesting part of this graph is it confirms some of the preliminary research that we conducted, as well as places that we identified during our first site visit with Councilman Tom Sears. Next slide, please. So we didn't just want to end at finding a mathematical way of giving you the risk associated with flooding for each particular street, but we wanted to better visualize the risk itself. And when we're doing our primary research and secondary research using resources such as risk factor, the Township of Washington was identified to be a low flood risk area. But as you can see from the pictures on the right, that's definitely not the case. And we found that the reason for this was because flooding was occurring at localized regions. And when that data is generalized to the entire population of the Township of Washington, it will be classified as a low-risk area. But we wanted to do some diligent work and be able to pinpoint the exact locations where flooding occurs. And this is just a heat map which shows the severity of the flooding, as well as the risk associated with the flooding at any particular street in the Township of Washington, based on the data that we collected from the survey. So the more red a point is, the more at risk it is. If you do have your phone or mobile device with you right now, you can scan the QR code and it will take you to the map, and then you can see whether your street is a high-risk area or not. Next slide, please.
Terrell Seche. So for our next deliverable, we used our calculations, our data, and our survey results to develop a flood mitigation plan. So during our research process, we first looked into the flooding issue in the town through our hydrology assessment. And we found that policy restrictions from the EPA and private waterways prevented how the town could react to flooding. Next, we looked into structural mitigation strategies the town was recommended to implement, like levees and dredging. And we found that not only were these expensive, but ineffective in reducing flooding, it just redirected more water into other townships. So consequently, we changed our focus to green mitigation strategies that help with water retention. Next slide. Our survey comments also supported green mitigation. They also wanted to see more drainage management and community awareness about flooding. Next slide, please. In our survey, we had a question about different mitigation strategies in order to gauge what strategies had community support. And we found that reforestation and rain gardens had the most community support. Next slide, please. So we came up with these 3 different mitigation plans. The first is a buffer zone around the brook. As mentioned before, we had the brook is eroding and it's bringing debris into the township. And so having a forested area or buffer zone around the brook can help strengthen the brook and reduce debris buildup, therefore reducing flooding. The next strategy is the adopt the drain strategy. This strategy has been implemented across the nation, including 3 towns in New Jersey. It allows residents to help the town maintain brooks and clean the brooks. Maintain drains and clean the drains. And it can help reduce debris buildup, which reduces flooding.
Hi, I'm Maylee Hahn. So, raise your hand if you don't like to mow your lawn. Same, I don't either, sorry Mom. So as a group, we came up with our 3rd mitigation plan that we like to call Love Your Lawn. It's a proposal. Essentially, just like other green infrastructure and green mitigation plans, it would be planting rain gardens in your lawns. According to our survey, as Kayla already mentioned, some of the most frequent flooded areas on people's properties were the front and backyards. So this is our 3rd solution. Next slide, please. This also goes into our community outreach section of our deliverables. Next slide, please. So we created this step-by-step brochure that talks a little bit more about our Love Your Lawn proposal. It has a great log of native plants that we carefully curated. If you want, you can scan the code, and it has a more in-depth kind of table with all the information about these plants. Native plants are very important. They take up less water, and they can soak up more, so it's a great way for green infrastructure. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then we also understand that another concern has been the loss of canopy in your community. So we also pulled a few native trees that might also be of interest in your yard. Yeah, and most of them are medium to small size because we understand that not everyone wants a massive oak tree in their yard. Next slide, please. The second community kind of outreach thing that we made was called the Story Map, and it's an ARC Esri product that essentially is one big website, one page that just goes all the way down. We wanted to be as transparent with our project as possible, so we will have that QR code next week, which we can also send out that you can look at and learn a little bit more about the details in our process. Next slide, please.
Now, after proposing all of these solutions, the main question that we had is how do we best optimize these proposed solutions in order for them to solve the problem to a high degree, but also with the lowest amount of cost incurred. So we started with a problem statement. How much water do we need to drain in order to mitigate the flooding in the Township of Washington? So just to give you perspective, the volume of water from the watershed, which is shown on the right, is approximately 54 million cubic feet of water. And to give you perspective of how much water that is, that's enough water to fill the entire Empire State Building almost twice. So that just gives you an understanding of how much water needs to be drained in order for this not to be a recurring problem inside the Township of Washington. And with that problem in mind, we did obviously come up with some solutions, which I shall share on the next slide. So looking at the proposed solutions, we wanted to optimize in terms of cost, but also in terms of the amount of water that is drained. On the left, you can see on the solution section, we have adopted drain, buffer zone, and lavier loan, each ordered with the increase in the cost. The cheapest possible one was the adopted drain, which cost 1 cent per cubic foot of water that is drained. And the reason why this is not implemented throughout the entire township is because there's a limited amount of drains in the township. From the data that we collected, there's approximately 1,113 drains. So that means there's a limit to how much water that you can drain in the township. And this table shows that approximately 20 million cubic feet of water can be drained. And for the buffer zone, approximately 300,000 cubic feet. And for the lavier loan, approximately 9 million cubic feet. All this was done with a little bit of math, optimized, and then we found that the total drained water would be around 30 million cubic feet, and that results in a 56% reduction in the total water that's contributing to flooding. But it's also worth noting that for the lavier loan, even though the cost associated with that mitigation strategy is high, that's because this data was used for the entire township at large. So assuming that everyone actually partakes in this proposal that we have, the total estimated cost would be 91 million. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, 91 million is a lot of money, and we do understand that, but there's hope on the next slide. So one of the opportunities that are there's a program called IRA, so it's the Inflation Reduction Act Community Change Grants Program. They can have approximately grant sizes of about $2 billion, and if you compare that to the 92 million, that's pretty much a huge sum of money. And in this particular case, the proposals that we have is not just for single individuals to use these solutions and actually implement them. But we do understand that in order to solve flooding in the Township of Washington, it takes the direct involvement of every single person inside the community, working together collaboratively to make sure that flooding is not a recurring issue in the Township of Washington. So with the collaborative efforts of people, with the Adopt Your Drain program and people volunteering to take care of the drains, as well as the grants that exist, this can actually be a problem that can be solved, and we are optimistic that implementing these strategies will actually reduce flooding in the Township of Washington, and that is better illustrated on the next slide. So this just shows the impact of the solutions that we propose, showing before and after. So on the left, you can see after a typical storm, 4 inches of rainfall, there's a person carrying their dog, which really presents a sad depiction of what could potentially happen in the event of flooding in the Township of Washington. This is actually from Vermont, but with the implementation of the solutions that we propose, leading to a 56% reduction in the amount of water in the watershed for 4 inches of rainfall. 4 inches of rainfall that would otherwise be a storm leading to flooding would now seem like a 1.76 inch day of precipitation, and that's literally just a normal rain day, and you could, with the implementation of the solutions, go outside and walk and not need to worry about any flooding in the township. Next slide, please.
So as a group, we also came up with 3 potential projects, if you guys want them, for recommendations for moving forward. So the first one would be pipe infrastructure. During our hydrological assessment, we walked around and saw that there was a lot of sewage pipes that were about to bust or the crack and stuff like that. So this kind of project would deal a little bit more with that, understand a little bit more of the piping, and trying to make sure there's no contamination or even more flooding because of the blockage of raw sewage that might spill out. The second one would be a little bit more with policy change and looking at like the Environmental Protection Agency and all their kind of policies and restrictions, as well as land ordinances. As Terrell mentioned previously, we talked about how that was a huge roadblock and barrier when we came up with these mitigation plans, because we kept hitting roadblocks of, oh, we weren't allowed to do certain things, such as the Environmental Protection Agency not allowing to remove invasive plants and planting natives along very eroded waterways. And then the third one, we would love to see our Love Your Lawn proposal come into action, see people, come into your community, really help out, get down in the dirt, and implement these rain gardens. Next slide, please. And then lastly, we'd love to extend our sincerest gratitude and thanks to those who have helped us along the way, as found on this slide. And then lastly, next slide, please. We'd also like to thank our donors and funders for helping us with this project. Thank you so much for your time.
That was a wonderful presentation, and I thank you. And I know Mr. Sears has been heavily involved, and Ms. Velez and the mayor, but that was fantastic. As a teacher, A++ with extra credit. Fantastic. And I think as a council that we can implement some of those things, and a lot of new information I wasn't aware of. And I appreciate always learning about those things, and it was just fantastic. And we do have a presentation for you, and I'm going to let Mr. Sears do it because he worked with you more than I did. And I think he deserves to do so.
Thank you.
But thank you so much.
So-
Really fantastic.
Thank you. Thank
See,
you.
you want to come down?
Yeah, sure. Daisy, come down too. There's only three of us.
So can you read the proclamation?
Don't have one in the middle. Okay. This certificate is proudly presented to, and it's going to be, your names in here, I'm going to butcher them, so. Kayla Capistrano, for their role in the Montclair State University PSEG Institute for Sustainability Studies. The residents of the Township of Washington appreciate your hard work and dedication to their community. This is proudly presented this 30th day of July 2024. Mayor Peter Calamari, Council President Michael DeSena, Council Vice President Stephen Cassio, Councilman Thomas Sears, Councilman Michael Ullman, and Councilwoman Daisy Velez. Each one of you will have one.
I can tell you a story about Terrell being but we'll skip that for now.
Back to college, I don't know.
I'd like to get a picture of all of you with, when you're all done.
Inside.
Hey, Sarah.
You always got to take a picture.
Thank you.
Now, we can get you all up here, take a quick picture.
Yes.
Where do you want to go?
Where do you want to go? You want to go on the side of the lady behind you?
Yeah.
Yeah, just on the side, isn't it?
Yeah, go over here. I can honestly say that was a great presentation. Really, truly nice. You guys did a lot of work.
How about we shift this way, because you guys are
Shift.
behind you.
There. Say one.
Keep going.
Keep going. Say one.
Okay.
And we'll take 5 wallet sizes.
The order form will be on the website, sir.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
give a couple of minutes for us to shut down.
We have a motion to adjourn?
We can get up there. Okay, do we have anybody on the thing, sir?
No one's online?
I would just like to make one final statement, Council President.
Sure.
I would say it's been a pleasure working with all of you. Every Zoom meeting was a different event, I can tell you that. From 97 degrees and somebody wearing a heavy wool sweater to a drink that would have necked the I wouldn't even go there. But anyway, you guys you actually did a lot of good work on this, and it's a lot of great information, and you should all be proud of yourselves, really. And I think you have a great future in whatever goal you're looking for. So we're probably going to meet again, but again, thank you so much for the presentation today. Thank you.
Daisy, would you like to add anything?
Yes. Thank you so much for everything all the information you brought to us today. I also want to thank Councilman Sears for doing this and bringing this to our community. It takes a lot of work and dedication, so congratulations to you as well. You did a great job with our group here. So great job, Councilman Sears.
Excellent group.
Yeah, fantastic. I know we can implement some of this stuff. The nice thing about it, I think a lot is not cost prohibitive to do, kind of easy. Sometimes we look for very difficult solutions, and the easy ones are out there. We overlook them, but we need those to be brought to our attention. So again, I thank you very much, Mr. Sears, Mr. Velez. I'd like a motion to close today's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.